Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Illfoominati. I am your host, Ryan Fu, and I am here with some lovely humans, like I tend to be every Sunday. This is Samson over here. Say hello, Samson.
Hello, Samson.
And with us today, our guest, Bree Davies.
Hi.
Bree, your camera's over here. Say hello to the lovely people.
Hi. I really have a voice for radio, so sorry that you have to... Just kidding.
You've got a voice and a face for radio. So we're here today. It's a Sunday. It's kind of a crazy time in the social and media landscape of America. But I'm happy to be here with you guys in this comfy little studio in a beautiful state. So first off, how you guys doing this morning? Let's start with Bree.
I'm good. I mean, just talking about earlier recognizing reality and, also just letting yourself be at the same time. So just trying to just really think about deeply just where we are in the world and who we are and what we can do. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's always hard when sort of national tragedies or things that seem of the sort happen. You do ask that question, like, what can I do?
Right.
But
huge question, I think, for many people right now.
Yeah, especially when it comes to hate and anger and all these other forces that are in the world. I'd like to shout out a kind of reminder that it's easy. The more hateful hate becomes, the easier it becomes to hate it.
Yeah.
So
it's really easy to feed it.
Yeah, it is.
Bizarre.
That is a fire you cannot fight with fire.
No, it is not. There's really no fire you could fight with fire, actually, it turns out.
Well, sort of. It is a real thing to fight a fire with fire because if you control burn your stuff...
Oh, it has nothing left to burn, I guess.
There's no good...
You
but controlled burn's not a good metaphor for, what we're dealing with.
But metaphorically speaking, that does not actually work.
No, it doesn't. Well, how about you, Samson? How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah, man. I've had, a really active weekend. Things are piling up. We're leaving for the burn soon, and I'm in charge of a lot, and I've had a lot of stuff thrown on me, so I'm kind of, I can feel the pressure.
Yes.
But I've had a really active weekend. Good friends are in town, and seeing lots of people and doing lots of fun stuff, so top of the world, really. Good.
That's a good way to feel.
Yeah.
I'm not, there right now, but I know what it's like to feel like I'm there, and I know I'm going to be on the other end of this. I'm coming off of a long series of event production days, so I'm sick and getting through it, so I apologize to the audience if my voice is a little clogged and stuffy, but don't worry, I won't be talking the whole time. So Bree's our guest today, so what we like to do on Illfoominati is focus on our guest and learn all about who they are as a creative and why they do what they do. So, Bree, you do a lot of different things.
I do.
Among them, you host or co-produce the Tit Wrench Festival, right?
I do.
You said that's 9 years running.
9 years running, fully DIY.
Tell us all about it.
Okay, so in 2008, a group of us got together, and we're like, man, festivals don't represent people that look like us, or
women?
that women, people of color, queer people, generally marginalized people are not represented in large scale festivals. Right. Right. I mean, and we've continued to see that
I don't know. The white female is pretty well represented.
I don't know.
You don't think so? I mean, you throw some feathers on them. That's all you see. If you search a festival, all you see is white women.
Not on the stages.
Well, and we're not going to discount women fans regardless of what they look like or how they dress.
That's
because
true,
they are purveyors of music and supporters of music, and we're longtime treated as fangirls when in reality we're the reason that the Beatles got popular. So I mean, I could go there, but I don't.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, if you look at all the great models of marketing, the first thing they tell you is that it's important to have women there.
Right.
It's the first successful marker.
Because you know what we tell each other, everything.
That's what I'm saying is I don't feel like women are marginalized in festival culture. They're certainly marketed to. They certainly show up. They're not on stage necessarily.
Right. We're not even invited on stage, and that was I guess that's where I would like to start with my festival. Is the purpose for us was to invite people to the stage that normally don't necessarily feel welcome, because
important.
we're treated as a female musician. Myself, I don't identify as a female musician, but I'm identified as that way. I've been treated as I'm invisible. I don't matter. My band's not real. My music isn't like we're like a subset of humans sometimes when it comes to like the music industry.
I'm sorry. That
it's
sucks.
okay, but that's why we started this incredible festival.
Hell
and so 9 of us started this festival on our own, and every year we bring artists from across the country and sometimes the world. We've had Canadian artists. We have artists from Puerto Rico. We have artists from all over that come to perform in this space that we create for generally 2 to 4 days. Our first festival was 4 days, which was, when you're like starting something, you're like, okay.
Make it big.
Make it huge.
Yeah.
And then we sort of slimmed it down. But we wanted to create a space where, where people felt welcome to be on the stage, and a lot of times talking to women and other marginalized people, they don't feel that they're allowed to be there. So just creating a space where you're allowed to be, and celebrating that. And so that's what we do. And we've been doing it for 9 years. We're a music festival. We're a teaching workshop. I mean, we have workshops this year on how to get yourself to the stage. But we also do workshops on building your own instruments through using contact mics to put a microphone on literally anything.
Yeah.
So what we do really runs the gamut in terms of style and the music is we're definitely like a noise oriented festival just by nature.
Noise oriented.
There's like a ladies in noise group. I mean, there's just like a lot of noise artists that are attracted, I think, to our space. But we also represent hip hop, folk, electronic music from every kind. And that's not as important as like, who you are and what you want to bring. So
that was going to be my question, genre.
Yeah.
So now my question is, why Tit Wrench? What about the name?
It was funny.
I love it. I love the name.
We do too. We wanted to use something that was, for some reason, controversial, and it's really subjective because you hear people use it to identify people's. And I think, we've evolved too in terms of like when we started versus now, where we realize how sort of binary the Tit Wrench moniker can be, because it's really not about just female bodies or whatever is identified as a female body. It's really about everybody. But we kind of
has nipples though.
Yes, but like the nipple versus tit, like tit is like such a word that, well, for the first like 6 years or something, like Colorado Public Radio couldn't even talk about our festival because they couldn't say
Because they couldn't say tit?
Tit, right. So we recognized that early on that it would be difficult to promote ourselves, but we're surrounded by over-sexualized images and content in every aspect of our lives. So it was a little bit of an ownership thing too.
Yeah, you're sort of constantly bombarded by it, so it's strange.
Right, but you don't want to when you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I loved watching, because what was it? That Scaramouche guy, Mooch, when he said that
my only regret is that I have bonitis.
I loved when he said that Steve Bannon, he wasn't trying to be Steve Bannon, he wasn't trying to suck his own cock.
Yeah.
And then hearing all the different news outlets like walk around not being able to say that phrase.
Right.
On live media. Oh, it was great.
Self-fellatio.
Right. Yeah, making references to like self-pleasure or whatever. And it's like, I don't know.
It's so interesting that the media is so censored. But only it's sort of censored in a one-sided way. It's interesting how oppression seems to take on that form of telling people, well, it's for the greater good that we can't do this thing, but really, that's not actually true.
It's violent, and yet the pretense is nonviolent. Like they're he quietly slipped the knife between the third and fourth vertebrae, and you're like, why is the news so violent? We're not. We use the words quietly slipped.
Rather than stabbed.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. What about location for Tit Wrench? Does it happen at the same
Wait, can we
place?
go back to the name real quick, though? What was the wrench about?
I don't necessarily know. I mean,
I just
I
feel
think
like
it's
a wrench in the gearworks,
right?
Like,
Throwing a wrench in things. I mean, it could be anything. I know it kind of took on a
I
life
think
of its
like
own.
wrenching the tit. That's what I think. It's like
just
like
tightening it up.
twisting a nipple.
Yeah, that could be like you could just like the titty twister to the man.
That's-
Fuck you, bro.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Tit
Men
wrench.
always take it very literally. Like whenever anytime I'm working actually on anything feminist oriented, and I have no wonderful male people in my life, but they take everything literally. Like, do you want to have a giant boob on the stage? And I'm like, why does it have to be physically, you know, or like
because we've
vagina
been
imagery.
Indoctrinated into that.
Right. Well, and we invite you to come and like check it out and see like, oh, this is like a little bit more
You
abstract.
should have like a big fat pregnant wrench with a bunch of smaller wrenches nursing.
Yes. I don't know if that would be an attractive marketing image, but I'll tell you what, it would
It'd look
be
good on stage.
The name Tit Wrench itself not really lends itself to
Well, I like the
marketing
fact that there's
anyway,
you guys have not attached a meaning to it. That's
Yeah, I mean, look at Meow Wolf. They said they chose those names out of a hat.
right.
Really?
And we're sort of birthed
just-
from the same era of DIY.
Exactly.
Too. So, and location-wise, I'm glad you asked that because we are a festival born out of the DIY community. And last December, our city shut down the 2 spaces that birthed Tit Wrench, Glob and Rhinoceropolis.
Yeah.
And those spaces gave us the freedom to make a thing that grew. And now this year we're at the Mercury Cafe, which is an ally of DIY. It's an extension of DIY in the form of a legitimate business. Marilyn McGinnity gets it. She's a source of unending support for all communities, as we've seen. Like, I mean, hello, the National Poetry Slam is here this weekend.
yeah. I'm so busy.
Where did that have a space to be initially? The Mercury Cafe.
Yeah.
So we're really grateful to be there. And we were there one other year out of the other 8 years that we've done it. But the majority of the festivals we've done have been in DIY spaces. So Glob, Rhinoceropolis, what is now known as Club Scum. It's had many names. Seven Circle, which was at Blastomat at the time that we did it. I'm trying to think who has hosted us. But what I want to say about those spaces that I think is lost in this conversation about zoning and like what's an illegal space and why people can't be in them is, have you ever tried to use an event hall for anything? They're like, it's $1,500 to walk in the door.
An hour.
And there's liability and I get it. There's all this logistical stuff and you have to pay for all these things. And like when you're a festival of 9 human beings, most of them working at or below minimum wage, and you're trying to create something,
not possible.
No, it's not. So Rhinoceropolis and Glob were our homes that said, yeah, hell yeah, we want it. We want you to be here.
You can say fuck on this podcast.
Okay, like
you can say fuck yeah.
Like be here.
That's
and
good.
like it's sad to me because I have had some of the most transformational life experiences in a dirty warehouse that during any other you couldn't get this person that hangs out in Rhino right now off the street to walk into that space and go, this is the most incredible place I've ever been.
Right.
Because people have all these ideas of what's legal. And if it's legal, then it makes it interesting. Like, think about all the ways that when you go to see a concert in a traditional venue, like you're subscribing to this, like, well, I have to pay for a ticket. Here's the money for the ticket. Here's all the fees that I pay. Then I go in and I stand 20 feet away from a stage and the person is elevated and then there's a barrier between us. And in DIY world, generally, you don't have that.
It's nothing like that. Yeah.
It's you and the performer. You can be face to face with that person.
Yeah.
And that's where my first real experiences were as a community and arts organizer, was like, oh my God, I can make help facilitate experiences that will transform somebody into a musician when they've been always told that they couldn't be.
Of course.
So, you got to have these, like, I believe you have to have spaces to get weird. And like get uncomfortable and like see weird things and
not lose your savings over the course of doing it.
Yeah. And we have always had a sliding scale price. So, and it's cool with sliding scale because some people who have the means will walk in and say, I'd like to pay $100. Mm-hmm. And that's great because the next person might be like, man, I have $3. And you're like, great.
Yeah, exactly.
You both can have the same access to the space because somebody who was able to pay more did, and somebody who wasn't able to but really wanted to be here was able to be here anyway.
Yeah.
So,
I actually started in a similar world. I ran a little DIY theater called the Atlas Theater for a while.
Absolutely. And you can speak to it being in any kind of space, right?
Yep, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That was sort of the beauty of the black box, is what it's called in the theater world, right? Which is any room that's painted black can turn into a whole new universe of art and metaphor and experience, and it doesn't need super high powered lights because it's pitch black. So like any lights make it look incredible, And, yeah. So I come from that world as well, and I know it's everything, and also that like a lot of the people who don't have any money one week, will come back 3 weeks from then and pay $50 because they appreciated being able to come every time and being accepted no matter what.
You know, and I want to say something to that, because you see that in the larger legitimate world of concerts. You see someone like Dan Deacon, who came out of the DIY world. He came from Baltimore, which has a really incredible scene, and he made it to a certain point, and then he helped Ryan Ostropoulos pay for their PA system.
Right.
Like, people come back around when they're able to. Or like No Age is a band that came from The Smell, which was this really venerable DIY venue in LA, and they they got to a point where they were touring with the Pixies. Well, they had some gear issues when they were in Denver. Guess where they got all their gear from? Ryan Ostropoulos. Right. They're playing the Fillmore.
It's called community.
Right. It's exactly.
Yeah,
it's that person-to-person connection that you can't make through contractual agreements with venues.
Yeah, and it's not even really about the money. It's about the relationships and the value, you could say. Because money is not actual value. It's just a metaphor.
Right.
It's just a way for us to appraise value, but it's not the actual thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the people.
It's the people, and it's the experience, and it's the way that we can grow together. So it's awesome. Congratulations on 9 years straight of Tit Wrench.
Thank you. Yes, it's August 25th and 26th at the Mercury Cafe.
Beautiful.
From 4 p.m. to 1:30 in the morning. We have music. We have this group that comes all the way from Albuquerque every year named Milch de la Máquina, and it's a group of musicians and poets and performers, and they literally create a special event for Tit Wrench every year. So one year they built a bird out of fabric and encapsulated the entire audience and then brought us outside underneath this bird. Like, it's a hard sell. I'm like, come down, see this thing. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be incredible.
Oh, I love it. That's the best.
Yeah. So like, those are the kinds of things we have happening, along with more like traditional music experiences. We have the Witch Collective, which is a group here in Denver of local witches and artisans that are setting up a market called Witch Wrench on Saturday.
Witch Wrench.
Yeah, from 5 to 10 p.m. in the Jungle Room below.
Any witches you can shout out?
My friend Katie Zimmerman, Zoe Williams. I don't know who else they're going to be including in this year, and then after that, we have an aftermarket that I've curated, which is from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. on Saturday night, and it's you can get chair massage, tarot readings, astrology readings. You can get your nails done. Anybody can come and do all of that stuff. So it's like a relaxing time while there's still music going on as well.
I'm going to go get my nails did.
We have this incredible woman named Yasmin who does a DIY nail shop called Don't Be So Cuticle.
I've heard of that before.
She's amazing. She, I think it started as sort of a project for her after she got sober and she needed something, to really focus on. And she's come to Tit Wrench and will do nails for like 12 hours straight and just like talks. You'll see her she'll be with somebody for an hour and a half just talking, or Lady Speech, who's like an incredible figure in Denver.
She was here last week.
Was she?
Yeah. She's
going to be at our festival doing tarot, and you can't, there's no reading like a Lady Speech tarot reading. Like the energy, I've managed a lot of events where like Tit Wrench and some other things where she's doing tarot, and I walk by the table and I just see people practically leaning into her because they just want to hear everything that she's saying. Because it's so like, she like locks in and channels and just starts telling you truth, and you're like, she's an incredible person.
I've witnessed it a few times personally, and it's very good.
Yeah,
tarot, it's a very beautiful art form, and I'll also say that it's interesting how the sort of phenomenon of witchcraft and witchiness is really coming back to the forefront of consciousness.
My guest is also a witch.
Your guest is also today.
Yep.
Awesome. What's their name?
Bethany Moore.
Bethany Moore, the witch.
She's a lobbyist for the cannabis industry.
Oh, good.
We're everywhere. Witches are everywhere.
Witch.
I met one yesterday.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, you met Mariah. So there's lots of different folks around here, and I think that for all the talk about appropriation and how cultures are lacking of this and that, I see the witch culture as one that especially white women should really be embracing, because it's one that is one of the deepest European indigenous cultures and traditions, and the first one to be destroyed by colonization.
Yeah.
Before they came here and genocided the native people, before they before them and the French and everyone else went down and conquered Africa.
Right.
They first burned and killed all of their own witches.
Yeah, we genocided our own spiritual culture.
Yep, you killed your own healers first.
Well, and that's what's really interesting. The term witch is so broad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've brujas, you know, it's like every continent has its own
form of witch.
Yeah, and many different kinds, and I think that's where we can unify. And yeah, I don't know.
It is always a female archetype, though. I find that very interesting. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of power
kind
in
of
that.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, there's so much power in the spiritual place
Medicine
of
women, and
medicine women, exactly.
Yeah, medicine women, I like the term much better, which kind of has a flavor to it, like a specific kind of medicine woman.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
Not that it has to, but that's probably part of the
Conditioning.
the cultural genocide of the word. And,
Right, well, and the imagery that we have for witchcraft.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Broomstick flying and cauldron bubbling kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, when in reality, like, we know what medicine looks like when it's cooking, and, like, you know, what fire cider does for people, which is incredible things. And yeah, it's fascinating. But I do love that it's a unifying, like when I say that, it's one of the things I love about putting together events like Tit Wrench is communication with people that do
Magic.
Yes, magic people. Like, you get emails right all day from I work in an office as well, so you get office emails. Have you ever get an email from a witch? They're like, "Greetings, blessed."
Yeah.
I would love to bring my energy to your festival. I'm like, I wish everyone would talk to me like this every day, because it's just so soothing and like human.
Well, it's honest too. People don't realize
genuine.
that everyone has this syntax that has been, kind of installed. It's a good word for all that computer language stuff, but we all speak to each other in all of these like very formal, but they have a non-true overtone to them. And they're like, when you say it's like, we're walking down the street, Colorado, classic example. Hey man, what's up? And they're like, yo, that we don't care what's up. We're just saying hello. That's why greeting is like, I'm greeting you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like very honest.
Right. Yeah. As to where, like, when you meet, like, I'm thinking about specific witch people I know, and you meet them, and it's like a connection. They take a moment, they stop, they say hello, and it's not like a what's up. It's not a general. It's like a let's exchange energies really quickly.
Yeah, I've heard witches often use the word blessings, and I've never once heard a witch say that without really meaning, really consciously.
I mean, I think it can be any spiritual, person or someone that works in that world on a regular basis.
It can be any human being, but in particular, people who identify as witches do a really good job of that.
Yeah.
And it's because they recognize the value of presence in that way.
And seeing somebody, and you never know when you're going to see somebody again, or you know what I mean?
Or how important it might be to that person to be seen for just that second.
And
the kind of day they might be going through, to just run into someone to say, hey, like, how's it going? Blessings upon you. And then for them to stop and think like, oh, this person isn't just like, greetings, I am greeting you. This is the algorithm I am supposed to give. Goodbye. Instead, they're like, oh shit, this is a person.
Yeah.
And they're here with me in this moment. That to me is real magic. That's where people can get healed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us about All In Denver. I'm going to pivot several times.
Sure. So All In Denver is an organization that I work for, as well as I'm a founding member of, and we work on issues affecting Denver citizens, from affordable housing issues to transit, education. It's a varied group of people. I'll say that. I'm the most radical. Group. I would say I don't want to misrepresent it as a radical organization, because it's not.
Okay.
It's an organization that really works to function within, like, working with government entities to change things. And so I would say I'm probably the most radical member of it. But I work with affordable housing developers. Like, I sit at a table with people that are often, myself, have mischaracterized as evil people, but there truly are good people out there that care about affordable housing, that build it. I sit at the table with architects and former campaign managers and teachers and
people who are in the thick of the system.
Yeah. So it's a cool group of people that wouldn't maybe otherwise be working together for this common goal of equity.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On that note, Albus Brooks posted a Facebook status today that was like, so-and-so just announced so much more affordable housing for, District 9, whatever. And the first comment was like, well, I'm okay with it, I guess, if you guys can promise to keep the crime rate down.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, man, that is so mindset.
Oh, I could really go all day about that kind of person.
I mean, an affordable housing, when people say affordable housing, they're talking about catering to like basically average families, like the kind of crime-ridden poor person that person thinks they're thinking about can't afford affordable housing. They can't afford they can't afford a cardboard box to a certain extent in this
right. And affordable housing, you bring up a really great point. It's a very big concept that is thought of. If you ask somebody, what does affordable housing mean to you? Section 8. You have to have a housing voucher to utilize it. Actually, no, that's not affordable housing. That's one component of affordable housing.
You're talking about people who work 8 hours a day in any job should be able to afford housing.
Absolutely.
I have one of my best friends has an affordable housing apartment in a downtown building, and she's paying like $1,100 or $1,200 instead of $1,800.
Holy shit!
Right.
Yeah.
And so that serves a certain demographic, and it's great, even if it's not even the best for her. Obviously, I don't know, and I hardly know anybody that's affordable too. But it includes like those kinds of things. It includes tiny home villages.
Right.
It includes co-housing. It includes community land trusts where your community actually owns your land.
That's important.
It's very important. So that's something that I think we are working towards too with WeAreDenver is talking about affordable housing as a multi-pronged, multifaceted solution. That there's not just one way, build more units. Like that's not, we have, when the economy wasn't so great, you could, as a landlord, you could say, I want to be a part of this program. And then you are, you accept Section 8 vouchers or whatever. Well, now that the economy's better, those contracts are expiring. So we're losing affordable housing at a really drastic rate that was there
while
before.
Other rates are going up.
Right.
That's going down and the more expensive housing is going up.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that we work on with WeAreDenver. We really connect with council people and talk to them one-on-one.
Good.
And really try to bring the concerns of the people to the council people and also offer solutions in the form of how to, like plans, strategic plans on how to do this. Because like I said, there's affordable housing developers, there's urban planners, there's all in Denver. So we hope to, because if you think about what city council does, they do a lot. They do, in terms of like the scope of the things they have to deal with.
It's insane.
It's insane.
There's no way
most
they
people's
get to all
work,
of it.
your work doesn't necessarily include affordable housing issues, plus transit, neighborhood issues, like all kinds of things.
All the licenses and zoning and permit and parking spaces and everything that's involved.
Right.
Think about for one block, that could easily be one person's job.
But it's a council person that's a district, right?
A whole district.
So we work to facilitate, not just say this is a problem, city council. This is a problem, city council. Let us help you figure out how to strategize, how to fix it. Yeah. So I come from sort of the DIY arts community in my scope and view, and I've been able to bring a lot of perspective to some people that don't necessarily just don't have experience. They don't know people that live in warehouses, which is not their fault. It's just like, this is the community that I grew up in, so I understand how it works. And this is one segment of a population of a large swath of people that need affordable housing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that viewpoint because I think it's really easy to consider people your enemy when you're doing this kind of work.
Absolutely. It's very difficult for me. I've learned that a lot in compromising. Politics is all about compromise, and I have a really difficult time with that.
Yeah, well, sounds like you're doing great. We had Bobby Lefebvre on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how he does his best to find those middle grounds as well, and sometimes he just can't. But,
and he is in such an interesting position because he's on the Commission for Cultural Affairs. Yep. So he's constantly walking the line of politics and activism and art.
Yep.
And I know he said this, I've interviewed him many times for stories, and he's like, I'm not an activist, and I see that. It's funny because you don't want to be identified as something you don't feel that you align with or even can live up to or whatever, but you can do things that are activists.
You can do things that are happening in front of you. You can respond to them and help as much as you can.
And Bobby does a great job through his art, especially. I love his work.
Well, anyone who really believes that the system needs a total overhaul, which I think more and more people are starting to realize, is everyone's starting to realize also, I think, that we really need help overhauling the system on every level.
Yes.
On the level of people who really think the system can work and we just need to make a couple of tweaks. And on the level of, no, we need to burn all of it and start totally fresh. And on the level of, well, maybe there's somewhere in between, right?
Right.
So it's beautiful to see everyone working on all these different planes.
We have some pretty badass artists that have just been
stepping
brought
into the
on.
bureaucratic sphere and really doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see some of my peers get in there and work their magic that they've worked in the arts and their own communities for a really long time, and work with city council to hopefully shape Denver's future in a way that is equitable for all people.
Yeah, that at least is responsive in some way to the people that are living here.
Yeah.
The people whose lives they're affecting, who in theory elected them.
Right.
Right, indirectly or directly. Well, I think it's very interesting that you talk about how these people aren't evil, because I just produced an event called Culture in the Square. We had Cafe Cultura out and some folks from Los Mocochetes and a couple of indigenous folks who did some ritual. And a lot of it was talking about how, you know, open call outs on like gentrification and how this was originally no man's land and a passing through of all these different cultures that were just crushed and destroyed. And one of the sponsors that came to me was Trey Laura, who's a real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my first thought was like, oh God, no, I can't have a real estate sponsor for this event. Like, we're calling out gentrification, real estate. And then I sat down with one of their agents because I was like, no, I should be open-minded to this, right? And her name was Abby. So shout out to Abby for sitting down and listening to me. Because I sat down with her and she's like, well, what's your resistance? Why wouldn't you want us to come on? We'd love to give you a couple $1,000s and pay a couple of poets to do some things. I was like, well, first off, they're going to talk a lot of shit about you.
I know. I was like, do you know how people feel about real estate right now?
Yeah. And her question, really genuinely, she looked me right in the eye and sipped her tea and said, well, why? Why do people feel this way? And I had literally just got off the podcast with Bobby Lefebvre, right? So I was like, I can tell you exactly why.
Let me tell you.
And what I said was like, you know, look, people have lived here for a long time. There was a historical precedent of oppression and redlining people into these areas. And they made communities there, and now they're being pushed out. And this wasn't long ago. This was 50, 60 years ago, you know?
Right.
And they built their whole communities there. They were told that was the only place they could build them, and now they're being just raked through the mud and pushed out as quickly as they can be, and very cleverly. And so they're super critical of people who are coming in trying to buy and sell housing. And when you brush over that and you say, yes, I understand that, but we could sell your house at a 5% rate and we only take 20%. And if you know, like, and you immediately give the capital pitch, no one's going to trust you. And what really surprised me was how much Abby listened. She really took a second and said, oh my goodness, like this is a real, I understand that people have. Right.
Sometimes it's you having to just say it, something that's so ingrained in you and your experience or the work you do, just saying it to somebody who has no concept of
Never touched
will
it.
just be like, oh.
I mean, just in that moment, I had the it was something I kind of consciously knew, but it was in the back of my mind. And you saying that all of those people, like all of these, like North Side, Bobby Lefebvre specifically, those are all people that were put there. Yeah. You know, that's not where they were put there. Yeah. And that's a very important thing to remember, is that not only are they getting pushed out now, they're getting pushed out from somewhere where they got put.
Yeah. They got
and they made a home.
And they made a community, a whole community amidst terrible conditions.
Right.
Some really beautiful stuff came out of it too.
Oh, it's incredible. The North Side, I mean, the North Side's probably one of the most heartbreaking experiences you can have as a person that lives in Denver right now who knew it 5 years ago.
Exactly.
And like, this isn't like a rag on gentrification, but I mean, I'm an able-bodied white person that walks around the city every day, and I know the perceptions. But I also have I have weird perceptions about people that look like me. Yeah. I'm very skeptical of people that look like me, and I wonder what they're doing here, especially, I mean, I live on the West Side, and my neighborhood's predominantly Spanish-speaking, so when I see other white people, I'm like, what are you doing over here? You know, which is like, and that's not fair to me to say, but I also see it's not at the rate that it's happened in other areas, but I'm seeing that happen in my neighborhood where my neighbors are being replaced by white people.
It's coming everywhere.
Yeah. And something that I want to share with the thing that I try to get across when people say, what's so bad about, so your rent went up, go find another place. I have a friend and she lives in like the Baker area around the Ozatlan Theater, and we're exactly the same age. We have had completely different life experiences. Her whole life is in this neighborhood. She lives with her mother. She's 36 years old. She gets work clearly under the table from some spaces around the neighborhood that employ her because I think she's got some issues in terms of like getting proper employment. So she has a job, right? It's under the table, but she works and she used to get her hair cut at Jigs, which is on Santa Fe, and Jigs just closed.
Yeah.
And I was like, where are you going to get your hair cut now? And she's like, oh, I have a friend that'll let me pay her in 2 weeks. I can get my hair cut and then I can pay her a little bit every time. Like, who has that thought process to say like, oh, this is what we mean when so if she loses her home where her mother lives, she doesn't have a place where she gets her hair cut anymore. She doesn't have an employer that understands her experience or situation. She's not near her family where she also babysits her nephews. So
she's losing a lot more than her home.
You can't just pick all of that up and move it to Aurora.
Yeah.
You know, like we need to think about these things when, her building was bought. So that sucks for her. Like think about, and I'm not like, this is not like a pity story. I try to use these experiences that other people tell me. This is through she's told me this whole story, is to share this with other people to say, look outside of your own experience and say, oh, this is maybe why it's hard.
Yeah.
Like financially, you can't explain that. Like, oh, well then she should get a job over the table. Like, it's not that simple. Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes it gets down to like, does she have proper identification? I'm happy to go and help her and take her do that, but does she have the paperwork to do it? It's like, it's a chain reaction. And when we break that, we break up communities, we break up these personal connections people have that allow them to thrive and be part of the community.
I think part of the reason people are so gung-ho to believe like, well, she could just get an well, she should have an ID.
Right.
I think part of the reason people feel that way is they are under an impression that the system is fair.
Right.
And that it was built for fairness, or that it was built to equally serve everyone. And that's because in their experience of the system, it seems fair enough. It's not hard for them to go to the DMV and get an ID. But that is not the case for everyone.
So many people.
Not the case for most people in America, actually, considering how the population is shifting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're just one person, the first thing you need to recognize, I think, is just the system's not fair. It's not built to be fair. It was built to be overtly oppressive.
Right. I mean, like civil rights didn't just happen and then everything got started over.
No.
I mean, we're a country built on genocide.
Yeah.
Our foundation is in disadvantage.
Yep. And also economic disadvantage is how you make money.
Yeah.
So,
That's a really good point, too, because that same person who is like carrying themselves in this like, well, I don't understand their issue. It's the system is fair. It's inherently fair. And then in the next conversation, they could literally have, Susan, life isn't fair. You just have to get used to these kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's a
just
cognitive
pull yourself
dissonance.
up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you'll hear that same sentiment from the same person moments apart.
That's a really interesting paradox to be caught in. That must be a shitty place to be as a human.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important just to listen and get yourself out there. If you're not meeting people that are in a different economic situation than you, you will never understand why it's important to advocate for their welfare.
Yeah.
Like her and I work together in a community capacity. I am so grateful that she's my friend because it constantly is like, this is why I got to do the work I do. This is why because I have privilege and opportunity. I'm an college educated, able-bodied white woman. Come the fuck on. Like, it's pretty damn easy for me. I can navigate any space I want.
Yeah.
People, strangers trust me. That is the opposite experience for many of my friends and family of color.
Yeah.
It's like, realize that shit, you guys.
Yeah, the first step to realizing privilege, I think, is just stepping outside of it. Because I think a lot of folks who are in deep privilege states, which also the first thing I want to recognize, too, is we talk about privilege, but I think the more appropriate phrase might be relative privilege, because it's not that much privilege. It's everyone is oppressed by the system. Everybody.
Right. Well, exactly. That's why everybody needs to be involved in dismantling it, because whether you realize it or not, it's confining you
horribly
in some way.
Yeah. But if you think that what you've got is normal or not oppressed, right? then and you never touch the other side of it, then you just assume they're not working hard enough to get to where you're at. That seems like genuinely I grew up in suburbia.
Sure. A lot of us did. We're this generation of
Guilty.
that we are. I mean, it's not our fault. It's our.
No, it's just it's the life experience that you had.
Right.
And I remember, I actually have a very poor memory of my pre-18 life, but I remember when I was like 15 or 16, it was younger than that. It was like 13. We had a teacher who was Jewish, and we had just learned about the Holocaust, and everybody in the classroom, I think except for me, was white and Christian. There might have been like one other Asian girl or something like that. And was sort of, it's interesting how when you're young and in suburbia, everything is predominantly Christian in a way that like you don't even question. And I remember when we found out that one of our teachers was Jewish, which is not like a big deal, right, actually, in real life, but we were like, do you know anyone who was in the Holocaust? Like that was how disconnected we were, right? We only had these stories, we only had these icons, these mythologies to understand other people because we had never met them. And what this makes me think of...
And they're not presented to you in anything that you consume, really.
Yeah, they're not presented in any of the media. They're not any of the heroes in any of our stories. They're just side characters or bad guys. So who do you think they're going to be? So one thing that I think about that would actually be really successful and statistically was really successful was integration. And how growing up as a kid around other people of color or other people of non-color or just a variety of different people, non-English speaking people and people who aren't as able-bodied and things like that will definitely change your perception of what's normal. And I wonder, because the more I look at the stats, and I'm an educator, you're an educator too, yeah? We live in a really segregated time. In the education world, it actually is just as segregated, if not slightly more statistically, than it was during segregation.
Right. I mean, Denver itself is more segregated now than we've been in a really long time.
That's incredible.
You want to find the most economically disparaged people on the planet? Go and find a street or school named after a civil rights leader.
Yep. I mean, that's
think about that correlation. That's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a rap song about how Martin Luther King boulevards are always like terribly not very well managed, but ours happens to be pretty decent. But
yeah, Denver isn't. We don't even have ghettos really.
Well,
not on that scale.
Yeah, no, not really. We've had various different places, but they tend to get destroyed so quickly and moved into for gentrification purposes. Yeah, I think of the old
Denver's
Coors
just
Field
on
area.
the up and up. Even the people who aren't really coming up are coming up a little bit. Like if you go to Baltimore or Chicago and stuff, like 30-story, real ghetto crazy stories about how they've moved entire populations around in their city to deal with certain situations and stuff. Like we don't have that in Denver.
Well, yeah, Denver, our history with public housing is I don't know how we got out of that, but I'm actually dipping into urban planning a little bit and thinking about going to school for it. And the stuff that I've learned about, like Robert Moses, who's this insane planner in New York City that segregated people in like the most intense ways through highway systems running through neighborhoods and large buildings. So there's a really great documentary about a housing project called Pruitt-Igoe.
I've actually seen that.
Have you? It's a great documentary because it talks to people about how they made beauty out of this horrible place. Yeah. And then that was taken away from them too. And so, yeah, but I mean, I digress. I could get into this forever about thinking about how city planning affects what. Look at Globeville, Elyria, Swansea. Yeah. I mean, it's just mind blowing how the city ignored that neighborhood for decades.
And continue to.
And continue to until now. They're housing
because of what, I-70, I guess.
Well, it's the proximity to the city center. Anywhere that's close proximity to the city center is vulnerable to gentrification, and that's what's happening right now in Globeville, Elyria, Swansea. The most polluted zip code in the country saw its property values rise 70% last year.
That's insane.
And again, we're looking at communities where a large percentage of those people don't own their homes and they have handshake leases. They don't even have pieces of paper.
Right.
Because 10 years ago, you couldn't pay somebody to live in Globeville unless it was like they'd already had a family established there.
How much of this is planned out? Like, because
oh my God, so much of it. Are you kidding me?
I mean, if you look at 5 Points, right? So this is the story that I'm familiar with. 5 Points was surprisingly poppin' like 20 years ago. Maybe 30 years ago. That like shopping center that's right there before there's like all the fancy new bagel places and whatever the fuck's going on.
Before they got rid of the DMV and put in a jazz themed bar run by white people called Spangalang.
Yeah. But
I just saw that yesterday.
That's true. Before the DMV even though, before the DMV was there was still some other thing, but it wasn't like just the DMV. It was a mall. And it was a pretty popular mall. And what destroyed that, as well as a series of businesses with various other local entrepreneurs like Brother Jeff and people like that who created, did serious damage by putting in the light rail. And the light rail was, and
very complicated.
It's complicated, but I don't know the exact story, but it's something like, and I'm getting the numbers wrong probably, so look it up yourself. Way to do your own research. I think it was supposed to only take 2 years, and it took 5. And they closed the whole Welton corridor down for 5 years.
Which was majority black-owned businesses.
Yeah, 5 Points was, in the 60s and 70s, 5 Points is where most of the African-American community of Colorado lived.
Yes.
Again, back to red line communities.
Yes.
But by putting in the light rail, they devastated that area. All the businesses struggled. Because of course you do. If your
when there's construction in front of your business and people can't get to it.
For 5 years?
Yeah.
And then after that, there was another issue.
It didn't matter to them because it wasn't financially viable.
No, it didn't. But here's the thing. I do wonder how purposeful that is to do that because... And I mean, it'd be really complicated to like track all the financial lines and political lines.
You find me a white neighborhood like the Country Club at neighborhood and you tell me if they were just like, oh, we're just going to run a light rail through here. We're going to close down all your businesses for 5 years. People would be like, no, you're not.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is like you can't afford to. That's the thing. Is
right.
That,
and why can't you? Because these areas have been segregated.
Yes, exactly. Like when you look at a map, you say, well, we have to get from here to here. So here are 4 options and this one's the cheapest.
Right.
Yeah,
Let's talk about I-70. First of all, it was built pre-EPA, so there were no environmental protections on the people that are experiencing what we know now as environmental racism. There was no laws around supporting the people that were going to have their neighborhood decimated by a highway being run through it, and they're trying to do it again.
They're trying to widen it and do even
56 homes will be eminent domained. 17 businesses will be eminent domained.
You don't get paid shit too.
No, eminent domain is fucked. If you want to look,
you should get paid like 500% of the value of your home if you get eminent domain.
But you literally get the opposite.
Yeah, it's literally like as little as possible.
It's obscene.
Yeah,
and
it's like getting Blue Book valued.
The project is obscene, but that is a great example of just like, well, that's where the highway could go because it was the cheapest, and we don't give a fuck about the people here anyway. So just run it through. They're not financially viable. This land isn't viable. Like, it's one of the most heartbreaking things to me as a born and raised Denverite. I understand we were not built in a beautiful way. Yeah. I know our history. Look up Sand Creek. Understand we were colonized and we were named after a Kansas territorial governor who never even came here.
Yeah.
Before that, we were Maruca from Museo de las Americas. I've talked to her so many times. She's given me so much perspective on Denver as a migration pattern up from Mexico, and the Santa Fe Trail being a real thing. Yeah. And like that Santa Fe is like was part of, and we were what we called the changing woman is what Native culture called Denver because of our seasons.
Because it was so hard to live here. It wasn't a place that you like settled. It was a place you passed through.
Like we have to look at that stuff, but beyond that, and like understanding like that, those are our roots. But growing up here I was born in 1980, and seeing my city change in a way that has just consistently disadvantaged people. It enrages me and it energizes me to continue the work I'm doing, but sometimes I'm just like, can I fight this?
Well, let's step back for a second and wonder, because I'm going to bring this back to another really big national phenomenon right now, but how do you really start having these kinds of conversations with people who just don't get it? Because this has got to be the bread and butter.
Yeah.
We can work with marginalized communities until we're blue in the face.
Right. They don't, but
they're not the ones oppressing themselves.
No.
So the people we're going to have to convince are the legislators, the bureaucrats, the landowners,
the people
the developers.
purchasing, the people purchasing homes in these neighborhoods and not understanding their inherent what they represent when you purchase an $850,000 condo on the north side.
How do you have those conversations? What kind of life experiences are they coming from that they don't get any of this?
they're not experiencing the ability of their life is so expensive it can't really be purchased and discarded, which is not the case for like a marginalized.
So they could never even imagine that.
Yeah, they don't see themselves as purchasable because they're not, essentially,
not at the same rate.
Yeah, I mean you'd have to. It's a very rare phenomenon to be like booted out as an upper middle class kind of person. It does exist, obviously, where crazy developments are going on. You can imagine some sort of billionaire moving into your neighborhood and buying the entire neighborhood and kicking you out and building one giant underground base because he's worried about Trump starting World War III with North Korea or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's very rare. Whereas
what we're talking
a millionaire
about is very
comes
common.
in and buys up a building and kicks out 50 families and just crushes the building and starts something else. It's just like. You don't see it because none of your friends have experienced it, So like,
I want to get to know those people though.
Yeah.
Like I feel
those people. It's so funny you say those people. I was just talking to a friend who lives over here. Actually, she lives at like 38th and I don't know. She's over here, but she's born and raised Denverite, Latina activist, and she lives in the neighborhood where she grew up. And 2 houses over from her, like next to her, is like old school Northsider. Dude guy that's been on the block for 50 years, knows everything. Your dream neighbor. Yeah. The guy that knows everything that's up. Mm-hmm. Next to him is one of those things.
Denver Fugly.
Yes, a Denver Fugly thing. And she said to me, I have a hard time walking on the street. I talk to all my neighbors. And these new people that move into this thing, I don't even know if I can talk to them because they are so visibly in a different world than I am. How can I even approach them knowing that they're physically
they're on a totally different level?
They bought a thing that represents this. It's like, so how do we bridge those things because they're here?
They're here.
They're
not leaving. And
we cannot everybody until
totally.
We're us versus them because it's very tricky territory.
Yeah.
Because I'm born and raised here. I have friends from all over. I don't just love natives, as people say. I don't use that term. Yeah. But I love people from everywhere. But what I really want to see is people engaged.
Yeah.
And not just drive-by tourism or drive-by culture. Just like, I'm on a pedal bar coming through a historically black neighborhood, drinking my beer. Like, dude, what are you doing? So, how do we reach that person?
Well, I don't
know.
Well, I've got an idea. I think part of what we can do is make it cool. Now, be careful with this phrase. But I think part of what we can do is make it clear that part of what makes Denver tight, the Denver that people are moving to, is this kind of awareness.
I know.
Is the kind of culture and community that is actually aware of each other, that is actually working together. And
starts with talking to your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. And continuing to do awesome events like Tit Wrench, Like those are the kinds of things that bring us together in a way that people from the outside are going to look in on and say, wow, they're really waking up to themselves.
Yeah.
And like, what's going on in my world? I want to go there. So maybe that's a start.
That's a start.
Yeah. So that's part of what we're doing right now. And we're actually damn near the end of this podcast already. So thank you so much for being here, Bree.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fun. But here's what I want to blow it up to really quickly in the last 5 or 10 minutes. How much we got? We got
7, I think.
7. If we're interested in not theying the developers and the white people moving here and all that, how do you not they the Nazis and the alt-right people? And how do you recognize the humanity of like the really powerfully, hatefully oppressive folks?
You start by talking to other white, for me, talking to other, I'm addressing white people here. You need to talk to other white people that you don't even probably know are these people.
Right.
These people are us. Like, there's no difference. They're your cousins. They're your boss. They're your brother. I mean, you have
your mothers and your fathers.
Yeah, and it really takes like talking to people and asking them like, where are you coming from with this? Right. What's your source of information? Where do you hear from? What is the foundational thing that makes you believe this? And can I show you some other perspectives? Because I'm a journalist junkie. I read every blog every day. Very Smart Brothers is one of my favorite blogs for perspective, for fucking perspective.
Just to see it from a
Crunk
different
Feminist Collective. I mean, it's like I read Wear Your Voice, which is this incredible, really small feminist, marginalized women group that does just like incredible work on talking about these things. And like we as white people that look like me, you have to talk to other white people.
Yeah.
You need to stop. Like you said, we can talk to marginalized people and communities all we want. They're like, dude,
we know,
man. Yeah. We live it every day. What are you going to do with the people that you're at a cocktail party with where you don't want to talk politics?
The people you're afraid of losing your job to and all that.
Yes, and get uncomfortable. Get in there and be like, dude, can I ask you why you bought that house?
Yeah.
I just want to know.
Well, I was at actually like a friend's birthday party the other day, and I heard another guy whose name was Adam talk about how it was something about how like one of his black friends got into college, and he's like, yeah, and he's going for free because, you know, he's black. And I asked him, I was like, do you know that? He's like, well, yeah, he's black. And I was like, well, like, did he get a scholarship? And he's like, well, I don't know, but, you know, he's black.
Yeah, we just think affirmative action's like a blanket thing that everybody
gives everybody
gets.
free college. But really, I took a second to break it down. I was sort of like blindsided. I was like, what? You really think like just college is just insta free for black people? He's like, well, is it not? And my first question was like, where the fuck did you hear that?
Right. Where did that start?
And he's like, well, you know, my brother didn't get into college, and my dad always talked about how it was because it was an affirmative action college, and these other people got in and not him. And
it's funny, there is a tiny little nugget of truth where there's a little bit of affirmative action there where you might have a small advantage. But when some people talk about free college, they're like, hey, I got a $1,000 scholarship to my $30,000 a month school.
And let's start from the beginning of your fucking life.
Right.
Where you had the best opportunities possible as a white person. You didn't have any of these like things that you can't control affecting your everyday ability to do shit.
And even then, it didn't pay for all their
affirmative
college.
action isn't leveling all that out. Sorry.
No. Yeah,
it couldn't level it out even if it did give them college for free. Yeah. And it doesn't.
Again, it goes back to what you were saying. You got to uproot the whole goddamn system and start over.
That's where I think the best thing we can do is really ask those questions.
Yeah.
Just say like, hey, hold on a second, buddy. Like, where did
you get that information?
Yeah, like, I'm just curious.
And let me share with you some really cool sources and that's the thing, arm yourself with sources.
Yeah, information.
They don't have to be like Democracy Now! Or whatever, because sometimes people are like, oh, it's like too lefty or whatever. Yeah. Democracy Now! Actually does great work. But like some sources that you can share that you trust, and this is just required reading, so somebody doesn't, because otherwise they're just going to look at you and be like, well, how do you know that?
Yeah, one thing I like to offer to people is to look at both extremes of a side of a source. Like, if you really believe that affirmative action gives all black people college for free, go and compare that article, the article of like that right-wing article that says,
from the Blaze.
Sure, whatever it is.
Compare it with the left-wing raw story.
Yeah, sure, compare it with the left-wing, and then like look at them, and what I think most people will find is there's some discrepancies on both sides, and that person then, if they're someone who of real free will, what they're going to do is say, I can't really trust either of these. I have to make my own decision, and I have to look into this further, and I have to find all the different...
Be a smart consumer.
Yeah, be a smart consumer of information.
Yes.
Don't just take it.
And that's a really interesting phenomenon. I would encourage anyone to really dig into that these days, especially more than ever. But like, go and look at something right and go and look at something left, and you can distill out what happened. Like a guy walks into a store with a gun, but then...
How is it framed?
Through the lens of the left and the right is... why did he do it and what's going to happen because of it? And both the left and the right will have all this like story thrown in. They'll just invent this amazing, like he hated this and he didn't like that, and so because of that our neighborhood's going to be ruined. And then the right will take the exact same information and spin the exact opposite story. And neither of them are really dealing with the truth, of someone who was probably suffering some sort of situation. That's why they're lashing out into society, no, it's amazing. I love, this is one of my favorite things to do is just to read the right and the left and just be like, you guys are nuts.
So where's the truth? Where does the truth lie? But what's incredible about the proliferation of media through the internet being this giant vast thing is voices that would never get a chance to be heard are being heard now all the time.
That's right.
Twitter is like where I find everything.
Yeah.
I read indigenous people's voices and radical black women's voices every single day.
It's made the average American a journalist in a certain way.
In a really cool way,
but I would like, of my reading, I do, because my Facebook is extremely left, and so then I go right on my news feed to like kind of get
check
in between.
It out.
And like, the vast majority of the right, like the major topic of conversation is how they're all censored. Like they've all been... everybody's YouTube like
that is predominant conversation.
Yeah, and like, but it's interesting that all of the new algorithms that have been imposed on society are negatively impacting most people. Like all of your major publications, all of their readership, the links from Facebook, everybody's down because Facebook's trying how to deal with.
Oh my God!
The potential of like all of this, because it's just
it wants you as a target market. Chamber. It wants you to be either left or right.
Right.
It's like identify yourself.
Because
identify
I need
yourself.
to sell to you, and I can't sell to you if I don't know what you are.
Yeah. If I don't know if you're having a kid in 3 months, so you want diapers and baby stuff.
And there's definitely the market is a market, right? So if you're anti-market, the market will reject you. And that's like the big thing that we're seeing on the internet right now is that they're like, well, we're trying to monetize. And so money is attaching itself to these situations. But there's a lot of people out there who are like, I reject that kind of money. And so that kind of money is rejecting me. Yeah. So we're in a very interesting situation in that regard.
Well, we are wrapping up. Thank you guys both so much for being here. We've had a wild conversation about Nazis and Denver and gentrification.
Read into Denver's KKK history, just please. The streets that are named.
Look up Stapleton.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mayor Spear.
I heard
Check
that yesterday.
out.
I had no idea.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
Why we didn't change the name when we turned it into that weird Stepford wife neighborhood, I don't know.
If you really want to learn some crazy shit, look up the history of the Stapleton moms. Anyway, this has been We Are Denver. We're here learning about our city, and if you're somebody who looked up what the hell Denver is and you stumbled upon this really is what it's like here. So make sure you come and you check it out. If you're interested in living here, come and talk to people who already do.
Please don't read real estate blogs that tell you top 10 reasons Denver rules, because they don't know.
Generally, let me offer that you shouldn't read any blog that says top 10 reasons anything. Just go ahead and avoid those.
Listicles are the death.
Yeah, what you can do is listen to podcasts like this where there are real people sitting down with other real people having real conversations. None of us have talking points. None of us has agendas. We're just being humans. So I want to say thank you guys for being so genuine.
Thank you. Can I give a shout out?
Please.
So,
all your things.
Tit Wrench is August 25th and 26th.
Go.
It is sliding scale, all welcome, all ages, everybody.
So you have no excuse
at the Mercury Cafe.
Yeah.
I also do work for Channel 12, so you can watch my show on Saturday nights.
What show is on?
It's called Sounds on 29th. It's a music and comedy show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's all local.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and then you can find me at Coco Davies on Twitter is where I'm most prolific, and I share a lot of information about Denver there. I definitely have a slanted perspective of like, I'm really proud of my city and I love it, but I also criticize it a lot. So, but I try to share as much positive history as I do to sort of balance out the rough stuff we're dealing with. But I'm a huge advocate for the Mile High City, so you can follow me, and I hopefully will enlighten you. And feel free to ask me questions there about Denver. So
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
There you go. That's the most unbiased you could possibly be, being honest about your bias.
I am.
Thank you so much for being here, Bree. This is the We Are Denver podcast, and this has been Illfoominati. Thank you, Samson, for being here.
Yeah.
And we've got all different kinds of cool stuff coming up. Next up is Nothing Explained, Samson's podcast. Stick around, people. Love and peace. Have a good one.